Hello and welcome to ACI Eco SAT Masterclasses. Here we'll be dealing with different types of questions in both reading and writing section and the mathematics section. We'll learn many new things and at the end of the day, I guess most of the things are just going to be revisions and I'll be giving you tips and tricks to score better in your SAT. So we'll be starting our ACTCO journey with reading and writing section. So in day one, we'll be dealing with command of evidence questions, inferences, and central ideas and details. So command of evidence. This type of question, I say we have again two different types of question. One is command of textual evidence and one is going to be command of quantitative evidence. And we will learn how to deal with both these types of questions in the coming slides. So first is handle command of evidence type of questions. Here we'll firstly give an introduction and what is command of evidence then? Choosing an option which strongly supports the claim or the argument presented to us. This is basically how we are supposed to answer subway question in SAT. So subway MCQ we have to find some of the suitable answers and that has to be selected through a lot of logical thinking, calculations and more. So like I said, Akipani, we have command of evidence type of questions and which are again divided into two categories. One is command of textual evidence and one is quantitative evidence. Again, our command of textual evidence is going to be of two different types, scientific and literary type of questions. So moving on, we have command of textual evidence. About what is command of textual evidence, Vanda, we will be given a long paragraph. Ani to paragraph must say certain information say we should know that it is points of emphasis and we have to use that knowledge to basically answer what the question is asking us. So, as stated, choosing an option which strongly supports the claim or the argument presented to us in the form of text paragraphs. So, like I said, these are of two types, scientific and literary. Scientific means any types of question which deals with research or experiment based. So, a scientist might have done a new research and he will be given the entirety of what the research is about. अब तो रिसर्चमा के गरेको छ अब त्यो रिसर्चको के कन्क्लुजन निस्केको छ त्यो इन्फर्मेसन युज गरेर चाहिँ we'll have to answer our questions. In literary, however, most of the time चाहिँ नोभल्सहरू र पोएम्सहरूको चाहिँ सानो सानो पार्ट्सहरू छुट्याएर दिएको हुन्छ and the parts that have been given त्यसबाट चाहिँ we have to know what the poet or the author was trying to say and answer the questions based on that. Moving on, I'll be giving you a short and simple example on how to deal with command of textual evidence type of questions. So here the example says, some residents in a neighborhood in Atlanta recently founded a community garden inside a local park. The residents agreed to volunteer to take care of the garden together. Students at a local high school surveyed some of the volunteers as part of a project to understand the impact of the new garden. The students concluded that the new garden benefited the community overall by fostering connections and relationships between the volunteers and other residents of the neighborhood who weren't volunteering at the garden. So after we're done with the question, we'll be given here with the paragraph and let's see what a question they answer. And here the question says, which quotation from the survey respondents would best illustrate the student's conclusion? So to even answer this question, हामीले स्टुडेन्टको कन्क्लुजन चाहिँ के थियो भनेर we'll have to identify through the text given to us. Right? So first one is just background information, अनि त्यसपछि about how who were participating as volunteers, blah 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 blah. As we can see from this line, it has been clearly stated the students concluded that the new garden benefited the community overall by fostering connections and relationships between the volunteers and other residents of the neighborhood who weren't volunteering at the garden. अब यसलाई नेपालीमा क्लियरली सम अप गर्ने हो भने बेसिकली स्टुडेन्ट्सले चाहिँ के भनिरहेको छ भन्दा भोलिन्टियर गर्नेहरू पिपल र नगर्नेहरू पिपलको बिचमा पनि देयर वाज अ गुड कनेक्सन एउटा राम्रो सम्बन्ध बनेको थियो बिकज अफ दिस न्यू गार्डन. Now we have to find the best option which is going to be similar to हामीले बनाएको एउटा conclusion. So A says, I love getting the opportunity to be outside and around nature, especially on days when the weather is nice. Now this isn't talking about duita different parties, but instead it's just talking about one person's perspective. So there's a high chance A might not be our answer. B मा भनेको छ, we're lucky to have a few expert gardeners living in the neighborhood. Some volunteers and I have gone to them a few times with questions, and they have been eager to help us and to learn more about the project. So here, the first thing is there's been a connection between two different parties, or I say expert gardeners living in the community or the neighborhood, and some volunteers who do not have the knowledge about gardening. अब दुईजनाको बिचमा there is communication going on, they're learning from each other. So we could be our answer because again हाम्रो क्वेसनमा के भनेको छ we have to find a conclusion that deals with fostering connections and relationships. So we could very much be our answer. Now C says, my favorite thing about the garden is the feeling of pride I get when I walk by each day. As I see the plants growing, I feel good knowing I had a small part in creating this beautiful space in the neighborhood. This feels like something one of the volunteers probably said during the survey. That again, that volunteer is only talking about how he or she feels to garden Mahara. So there's a high chance this is not going to be our answer. D says our first challenge was deciding what plants would be most suitable to the climate and the soil here in Antarctic Atlanta. We needed our plants that could survive the hot and humid summers. So this is just about the preparation on how to build a garden and again does not answer our question. As we can see, बीमा मात्र हो in which दुवै पार्टीको चाहिँ कुराहरू गरेको छ and we know that they have a certain communication going on between each other. So B is going to be our right answer. So while basically you're just supposed to find something that is similar, there are a few tips and tricks which will help you out in these types of questions. So the first trick that I like to give is be very specific. A lot of times in different MCQs that we're given or different choices that we're given, a lot of the information seems true to the text. It feels like the text को part हो, it sounds true, so most likely the answer होला जस्तो लाग्छ. But it's not necessary कि त्यो part paragraphमा हुन्छ भन्ने बित्तिकै that is going to be our right answer. So we have to be very specific when you come into finding our answer. And the second is be strict while choosing the answer. Don't let your gut feeling become a factor into choosing the answer. A lot of time with MCQ type of questions, especially people think ki just with gut you can just go with your gut feelings. But in SAT we normally have four different options, and while two can be easily cancelled out, the other two options seem to give us the biggest trouble. The way sounds same and the way sounds actually true. So if you let gut feeling be the deciding factor in these two, then there's going to be a high chance you might not get it right. So always go back and do cross check, or always try to, conclude the given data properly. So don't just go with your gut feeling. Now coming back to this diagram that I mentioned before, is say the main thing is types of answers. So like I said, Agibani, we have four different choices and we have to choose one of the answers. In this case, it was quite easy because it's when we were only dealing with Yoda certain subject book. But the type of answers that are going to be given to us will be of two types. One answer true statement or also false statement. First statement भन्ने बित्तिकै incorrect data, like अघि हेरेकोमा one was correct data and अर्को तीनटा included wrong data, so that automatically is called false statements. So they are false statements, but sometimes they will probably present us with Japan को data maybe, which may have been true in case of Japan. So you might feel like ए यो त हाम्रो डेटामा छ, so is this our right answer? But is it really working with, or is it really having a relation or a connection with Hande Taigeko subject or not? That becomes important. So while many of the data over there will false statement, if it could be right about Japan or any other country, but if it is wrong for the country we were trying for example Algeria, then yes, it is true, but it is not correct. Similarly, the right answer obviously is going to be which is true, therefore data may serve, and is also correct, meaning it's indicating towards the subject that we have chosen. So in this case, yes, we have found the right answer. Let's go back to the graph again. Here we have different data and the data seems pretty clustered. एकदमै नजिक छ. So यस्तो केसमा चाहिँ because in SAT हामीले त हाम्रो ल्यापटपसँगै लिएर गएको हुन्छ. So use that cursor of our laptop to find out the most accurate data so that we do not mess up the data in any point. The other tips and trick is just because an option presents the data doesn't make it the correct answer. मैले अघि भर्खरै पनि ग्राफमा sorry the diagramमा बुझाएको थिएँ that just because an answer has the true data does not make it the correct answer. So do know the difference between correct and true answers. So moving on, we have our second lesson of the day, which is going to be on inferences. So Isma we're basically identifying the ideal phrase for a word. And so, in this type of question, we have to choose the most logical option that completes the statement. So, it is quite similar to our command of evidence type of questions. So, your question was say the best way to deal with it is basically the paragraph जुन हामीले दिएको हुन्छ त्यसलाई चाहिँ दुईटा different partsमा divide गर्ने. One part is going to be हाम्रो premises and the other part is going to be हाम्रो conclusion. So, what are premises? The part of the paragraph that contains clues or evidence. So, mostly this is the starting of the paragraph rather than the end of the paragraph. So, starting mazi, there are going to be clues and evidence. And this section is going to be called premises. Orco section is called conclusion, like the name says, a part which includes either the summary or the conclusion. So, which might be this part. In inferences, say there are either two ways of going with the question. हामीले conclusion दिएर premises मा के छ भनेर fill in the blanks गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ or premises दिएको हुन्छ अनि conclusion के हुन सक्छ भनेर we have to logically find out the right answer. So here's an example on it. Adaptations to cool temperature have high metabolic costs. It is expensive in terms of energy use for land plants and animals to withstand very cold temperature, and it gets more expensive the colder it gets, which means that the lower the air temperature, the fewer species have evolved to survive it. This factor, in conjunction with the decline in air temperature with increasing elevation, explains the distribution of species diversity in mountain ecosystem. You find fewer species high up a mountain than at the mountain base because so here we have been given a fill in the blanks. We have to complete this part. Above, which choice would most logically complete the text for a question, sir? We have been given Hamru premises in the beginning, which says adaptation to cold temperature have high metabolic cost. So, कुनै पनि species, animals, birds, any other kind of animal species, if they want to live higher temperature lower temperature or higher elevation then it will require more amount of energy. किनकि you'll have to work harder, the body has to work harder. त्यही भएर जति माथि जाँदै गर्छ त्यति नै स्पिसिसहरू कम हुन्छ, एनिमल्सहरूको पपुलेसन पनि कम कम हुँदै जान्छ है. So this factor in conjunction with a decline in air temperature and increasing elevation explains the distribution of species diversity in mountain system. You find fewer species high up the mountain than at the mountain's base. Now A says there are relatively few environments hospitable to species that are adapted to live in low air temperature. First of all, any species that can live in low air temperature is highly going to be able to be fine in or normal temperature or even higher air temperature. So this is completely wrong information. Moving on to B, there are relatively few species with the adaptation necessary to tolerate the temperature at high elevation. Now, this is what Amro whole paragraph was trying to say again and again. So B could be our answer. Now C says adaptations that allow plants and animals to survive in rocky environment are metabolically costly. Here the main problem is the fact that rocky environment को कुरा गरेको छ, whereas here we are only talking about mountain ecosystem. So rocky environment सँग हाम्रो केही पनि relation छैन. Therefore C is not going to be our answer. And D says some mountain environments are at elevation so high that no plants or animals can survive them. Yes, maybe it is true, but it doesn't change the fact that we're not talking about the fewer relative species that can actually survive. So D is not going to be our answer. Therefore, B ends up being our right answer. Again, giving tips and tricks. First is focus on transitional words. Transitional words such as however, whereas, nevertheless, they change एउटा सेन्टेन्स र अर्को सेन्टेन्सको बिचको रिलेसन. So be sure to know what the transitional word being used is. किनकि however use गर्ने बित्तिकै we know that first को sentence भन्दा second को sentence is going to go against. Right? Whereas भन्दाखेरि there's probably going to add something more or could also be going against. Same with nevertheless. So it's very important to look at transitional words. Similarly, let the punctuations help as well. So the punctuations which is going to be given to us, full stop, comma, semicolon, those are very helpful if the case is now. So you should be able to use them. And the third is to stay specific. Like I said, ugly command of evidence questions are funny. It's important for you to stay specific. You don't want your gut feelings to come in your way. And at the same time, you don't want your answer to be based on the fact कि यो कुरा चाहिँ paragraphमा छ. Just because it is in the paragraph does not make it the right answer. Moving on towards the third and the last question type of our D1, which is central ideas and details. In this type of question, say, हामीले first of all say main purpose or main idea बुझ्नुपर्छ text को. Along with that, certain details जुन दिएको हुन्छ or points of emphasis जुन दिएको हुन्छ throughout the text, we have to use that to find the right answer as well. So again, in the introduction, it has been said we're supposed to either identify the main idea of the text or answer the question specific to a certain text or part in the paragraph. So yes, central ideas the भन्यो, main purpose पनि भन्यो, but how do you know that one of the options is the main purpose or not? So what should the main idea cover? A. It should cover majority of the details of the text. Throughout the text, a lot of data is going to be given to us, a lot of statements and sentences are going to be there. But the main things that are needed or the major details of the text, it has to be in our main idea. Along with that, certain texts tend to be more important, like I said earlier पनि. So जति पनि important हुने टेक्स्टहरू छ, त्यो पनि चाहिँ should be a part of our main idea cover. So basically, a certain paragraph को चाहिँ perfect summary जुन हुन्छ, that is our main idea. Now, what should the main idea not contain? A. Too much detail of just one point from the text. In the paragraph or in the text, there's going to be a lot of points made, a lot of data, like I said earlier. तर एउटै certain side को, एउटै certain line को मात्र कुरा on repeat भइरहेको छ, त्यसको exaggeration मात्र भइरहेको छ भने it is really not going to be हाम्रो main idea because it's focusing on only one point, whereas we want an answer जुन चाहिँ सबै पोइन्टलाई चाहिँ comprise गरेको हुन्छ. B. Introducing new idea that were previously not in the text. Any question in urban any type of answer basically which includes new ideas which was not in the text or in the paragraph or in the diagram is never going to be our answer. Know that much for all type of questions throughout SAT. Go English section especially. So the reading and writing section ma, if कुनै पनि option मा चाहिँ नयाँ idea introduce भएको छ भने it's pretty much never going to be our answer. So do know that. And C says ideas that are refuting or contradicting from the text. So text मा भनेको छ I support this claim, but the options that are given to us मा चाहिँ भनेको छ I am going against this claim or I do not agree with this claim भने that is not going to be our answer because यसमा त हामीले central idea or basically summary निकाल्नु पर्ने हो नि त. So how can a summary go against its main text itself? It's impossible, right? So if any of these three factors can be seen in any of the options, then they are not going to be our main purpose. For example, in Hamro questionnaire itself, there has been a part which says that including blah 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 leads to a much better understanding of the movement and the crucial and diverse roles that black women played in shaping it. This definitely is Hamro points of emphasis, and I had to use this information to find out what the main gist of the text was. So keep an eye out for such points of emphasis as well. So this is the end of our day 1, and in day 2 we'll be covering the following topics: text structure and purpose, words and context, cross-text connections and rhetorical synthesis. So please keep up with it, and I hope you guys will also look into the day 2 of reading and writing section.